marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live.
Comics,
This
business,
is
religious
Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. It's Veterans Day, and so we want to take this moment here on Point of View to say thank you to those serving in our military and those who have served. It's really a day to reflect on the military service of our fellow Americans and to express our gratitude for what they've done, and also to help them to re-enter civilian life and think of ways that we can be doing that. So thank you to all of you who have served today. And the military was one of the topics in last night's presidential debate, really the size of the military, the amount of money we ought to spend on it. And there were lots of other topics. It was the Washington Post called the debate a relatively cerebral affair, with little attention paid to the personal attacks that have been shaping the race. Well, it was very refreshing, actually. I thought Fox Business News did a great job. The candidates talked about their tax plans. Again, the size of the military, the size of government was a big topic. Certainly immigration was a huge topic, and they're very divided on that. And we're going to unpack it on Friday. Debbie Georgatos will be joining me, and we're going to go through the debate and also get your reactions and thoughts about it. And Gary Bauer, I believe, will be joining us on Friday also to do it, because today we've got some other topics. We've got a really packed show. In the first hour, I'm looking very much forward to, because I have an in-studio guest. Her name is Betty Hanks. She's been with us several times over the past few years. And she is a survivor of years of horrible abuse in her family home. Over 12 years ago, God began to work in Betty's heart and to show her that she is very valuable in God's eyes. And he began to walk her through the painful process of healing those wounds from her childhood. It's been a long and painful journey, but nearly 9 years ago, Betty felt called to minister to others who suffered the way she had. And she has developed a wonderful ministry called Realizing True Hope Ministries. She's mentored and shepherded women who are looking for healing, as well as trained others to do the same thing and walk more effectively with those people in their lives who struggle. That's why this is a show for everyone today. If you've experienced abuse in your childhood or in your life, or if you know someone who has, or even if you are just a believing Christian who wants to be open to help others. God has been faithful to walk with Betty through all the years of her life. She's blessed and privileged to lead women to experience the healing power of God as she has. She is blessed to be married to her high school sweetheart, Stephen. They have a 22-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old son, and amazingly, even though she's so young, a 2-year-old grandson. And Betty, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I am so heartened to see the growth of your ministry. I've watched it firsthand because it grew out of the church that we've been in, and has expanded to other churches, other states. And it's really a pattern, I think, for the kind of ministry that needs to be done to women who have experienced abuse. And I think we should just start by letting you just very briefly tell your story so that people know where you're coming from.
Sure. I grew up in a home where my father was he was both physically and sexually abusive with my siblings and with myself. I witnessed brutal things and experienced horrible things that no human being should ever have to experience. And it was the culture of our family. It was the way that we were all brought up, and we didn't know anything different for a lot of years. it wasn't until I graduated high school, went off to college, married my high school sweetheart, and the two of us started a family, and I began to realize that I really did not want to do things the same way that I had experienced with my family. I wanted to be a different kind of parent, but I didn't really understand what that meant or how to go about it. And the Lord really kind of ripped my world out from underneath me and left me in a place where I felt like I didn't have any other options and there really wasn't anything left for me in this life. And I looked at my husband and said, I need help today because I'm afraid I won't be here tomorrow. And he came alongside me and helped me get the help that I needed and walked with me while the Lord put a very godly man in my life who has been helping me over the last 12 years to really unpack everything that had happened to me as a child and the impact of it on the way that I made every decision in the here and now and the way that I chose to interact with people and the decisions that I made. And as I've been walking through those years, I realized that what so many people experience in a secular counseling setting, they're taught how to cope with things and how to just make things feel okay in the moment. And I realized I wanted more than that I really was craving understanding who I was and who God created me to be. And that's what I was finding in the counseling setting that the Lord had provided for me. And as I walked through it more and more, I came to understand how much of that was lacking in community and in churches, and people weren't able to find what the Lord had given me. And I felt like He had called me and planted this seed to help me be able to reach out to other women and show them that there is hope beyond the white knuckling coping that they're taught to do in so many different counseling settings today.
Betty, I realize from knowing you for a few years that there are specific principles that people need to know about if they're going to help someone or even be a friend to someone who's gone through this. I think that a lot of us, our heart may be right, but we're, number one, ignorant. We don't know how to deal with a friend that's gone through this or a person in our life, or we're naive. We don't know how much this really affects a person, everything in their life. Or we're scared, and that would be me. I just would be like pulling back just to say, I don't know how to speak to this person or help them. And so there are principles, aren't there? There
are. And if you understand, basically the first thing that you need to understand if you want to walk with somebody who has a history of abuse in their past is, number one, it has impacted every area of their life. Every decision they make, every thought that they have, every relationship that they have is tainted by what they believe about themselves because of what happened in their past. And until they are able to work through the impact of that, it will continue to be true. And we have to have that very patient, very gentle, waiting spirit that the Lord has, and wait on His timing for things to come to pass that we want to make happen very quickly. The other thing is to understand that she is not something that needs to be fixed. She's not a project to take on. She's not something that you can make better. Your job is to simply walk with her. She will have extremely high highs and she will have extremely low lows, and she will take a left turn where you expected her to take a right. And all you can do is just walk with her, continually pointing her back to the truth of who God created her to be and the truth that He is always with her, that He has never abandoned her, and that He will continue to walk with her until He's finished the work that He started.
Realizing True Hope Ministries is a well thought out name. I know that Betty Hanks and her board put a lot of thought into what they were going to name the ministry. And after the break, we're going to talk about some of the words in the title of the ministry because they help us understand what it's all about. And one of the words in it is true hope. And that's the word I want to focus on today, because there is a truth in all of our lives in the way that God sees us and the way He looks at us and who we are in Christ. And that can be so distorted when you're sinned against. It can be distorted for a lot of reasons, but I think nowhere more than in that situation. So we'll talk about it. I want you to think about calling us if you want to ask Betty a question sometime during this hour. 800-351-1212. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
20 years ago, no nation on earth endorsed legal same-sex marriage. Now same-sex marriage is everywhere. How did this happen? This is what Dr. Al Mohler attempts to answer in his new book, Why We Cannot Be Silent. He was on my radio program to talk about his book. He explains that this didn't start with same-sex marriage. First, we had the sexual revolution. Initially, some of the legal and cultural battles were over issues like birth control and contraception. America began to redefine marriage first by changing laws concerning divorce, and later with the acceptance of cohabitation and sex outside of marriage. There was also a homosexual rights strategy. Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen proposed a way in their book, After the Ball, to normalize homosexuality and marginalize Christians. They took advantage of the AIDS crisis to establish homosexuals as a victimized minority deserving a special protection and care. Albert Mohler explains how their strategy changed homosexuality from a vice to a virtue. He also talks about the impossible possibility of same-sex marriage. Homosexual activists were able to shift public opinion in their attempt to redefine marriage in a relatively short period of time. The emerging generation sees this redefinition as necessary because homosexuality is portrayed as the next civil rights battle. Albert Mohler also talks about the transgender revolution. Most Americans are not even certain how to talk about it, especially in this postmodern world. He concludes with chapters setting forth the biblical perspectives on sex, marriage, and family, and he raises important questions about the homosexual movement and what that will mean for religious liberty and the right to be a Christian. Our religious freedoms are in the balance in large part because of the sexual revolution and the redefinition of marriage. That is why we cannot be silent. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. I'm Penna Dexter. In studio with me is Betty Hanks, president of Realizing True Hope Ministries. And I wanted to focus on the name of the ministry. Of course, this is a ministry to help women who have experienced sexual abuse in their life. Often it's done at the hands of someone who they've trusted. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why they have so much trouble sort of with the reality that they live in, because the reality that we're supposed to have is that our father or the neighbor or the uncle or whatever is supposed to be out for our best interests. And suddenly you have someone abusing that position in your life. And so it's very hard to find the truth, what's true in your life. What's the truth? And, you know, our truth is who God thinks we are.
Right.
But it just gets so distorted in these situations. Am I articulating that okay?
Absolutely. The reality is that God is a loving father. And for those of us who have a history of being sinned against particularly by a man in authority over us, is we struggle to trust who God is. And anything that God says about our identity, we question because of the things that we've been through.
So what is the true self then? Just explain what that is.
The true self is that woman that God created us to be from the foundation of the world. The person who has that perfect relationship with the Lord, the one who is created in his image, who bears his image out in today's world, who is identified by the love that the Creator has for her.
And so we need to find that, of course, and that's through forgiveness in Christ, but also, I find this hard to even fathom, but forgiving that person.
Yes, and that's a very delicate place. A lot of the ladies that I work with really struggle with that, as did I for a long time. For my sake, I've forgiven my father, but that doesn't mean I'm going to let him back into my world. I still am not able to trust him in my life because of the things that have not been dealt with. But I can, before God, stand and say that I don't hold anything against my dad anymore. I long for the day when he will repent and we can be reconciled. But that I also know is whether or not God brings that to pass.
So when you think of truth, I mean, he's got to deal with the truth too. And if he won't, then he doesn't get that place in your life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one thing that happens when you have this in your past, I know that I think in your life, you told me that you kind of stuffed it to the point where you weren't even like recognizing what had happened to you for a while. And there's different ways of coping. People just have different selves that they portray that aren't your true self.
Right.
So you've got to kind of integrate and get your true self back, don't you?
Right. And what happens when we're sinned against is the body knows how to protect the true self. It will put up walls and barriers and different facades and quote, personalities that will take on different roles in your life. And each one of those different facades needs to deal with the reality of why it exists, what caused the kind of the fracture within the mind, so that because the fractured mind can't deal with reality, and until those fractures are melded back together, the mind can't connect with the true self. And so it keeps producing these facades that help us to be able to function in day-to-day life. So we want to look like what we think people around us want us to look like. And so we're quite able to create that picture of who we think people want us to be.
So some of it can be sort of a fake good personality, but you can also have substance abuse, living, just thinking this is the kind of person I am. I'm going to be promiscuous, all that, right?
As a matter of fact, I have had people say to me, well, the behaviors that are going on in my life, that's just normal for what I've been through. I don't need to fix anything. It's just who I am. And that breaks my heart because that's a lie that they believe about themselves, that that's all that they're good for and that they're never going to get any better. And that's not what God says. I mean, God has begun a work of restoration in our lives, and Jesus came to purchase the fullness of that restoration. And it is ours to continually work through until the day that he either returns or calls us home.
Betty, I know that you've done not only the personal experiences that you've been through, but you've done tremendous research, Bible study, your own counseling, and you've formulated a curriculum for people to go through. And, you know, that's why I like having you on, because I want our listeners, anyone who either is dealing with this in their past or knows people that are, to know that there's help out there. Your curriculum is 11 weeks long, and it really takes people through just a lot of biblical truth and also their own hurt and pain. And that's the ideal way to help someone. But you also have realized, and even through Point of View listeners who've said that they've been away from where you are geographically and have said, we want something, but we can't do that 11 weeks. We can't come to Dallas every, week for 11 weeks. But we want something. So you've actually formulated something else to help those requests, haven't you?
We have done a long weekend, and depending on the needs of the group, and we can do anything from a Wednesday evening through a Saturday evening. And we get the ladies together and we kind of condense those 11 weeks down into those 3 to 3.5 days. And the first part of the study is a time to really look at what's happened to us. Where was God? How do we reconcile all of this? How do we deal with it in our reality? And then we kind of shift our focus and start looking at what would God do with this? How is God using this to transform me more into the image of God?
So you want to help people. You also want to help people that want to help people, right?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest things that we really want to accomplish. I'm only one person, and my team and I can only do so much. And the best way that a woman is going to find healing is by walking in community with people who love her, who understand what she's going through, who know how to hold her accountable in a loving and faithful and gentle way. We can't do that from a distance, and we can't do that with ladies we don't already have a relationship with. So it is our desire to clone the ministry that the Lord has given us right here in Plano, Texas, into other communities around the country. And the Lord has been really faithful to start bringing people to us to go into their churches, to train their people to understand what is it a wounded woman is going through. How can you walk with her more effectively? How can you avoid hurting her, even inadvertently, to establish a more meaningful relationship that will be instrumental in helping her heal?
Ladies and gentlemen, our number is 800-351-1212. If you'd like to ask Betty a question about her ministry, or if you have even a situation in your own life, Betty she has a lot of training. She's not licensed as a psychologist, but wow, she's helped so many people. So even those personal issues, if you would care to ask her about that, we would love to hear from you, 800-351-1212. But more than that, we just want you to think about the idea that perhaps there's a need in your own life or your own church for this type of a ministry. And Betty, one of the things you mentioned, not hurting the person. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we do hurt the person because we've got in our mind something we think they should do or how they should live. Mm-hmm. And it's not taking them through the progression that needs to happen, right, to get them. Maybe, it might show on the surface that they're looking good and doing well, but they haven't gone through that progression, so they're really not.
Right. And too often we have, as Christians especially, we have these very quick, well, you should be trusting God. And she says, well, I know I should be, but I can't. And I don't know why. And I'm struggling with this. And if your only answer to her is, well, you just need to trust him more, then she has no place to work through that struggle. She needs to be able to say, I don't trust God right now because I'm hurting and I'm broken and I don't understand. And she needs the church to come around her and say, it's okay that you don't trust God right now. We're going to walk with you while he reveals himself to you so that you can more fully come to trust who he is and what he says is true.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this word truth, and the truth is that God is trustworthy, mm-hmm. and that he is there for us. He doesn't change just because somebody did a horrible thing to us.
Right.
God is there, and he's a forgiving God, he's a good God, he's a loving God, even though you've experienced some things that are not so good and not so loving. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to join the conversation, again, the number is 800-351-1212, and if not, we will just continue this conversation throughout the next hour, and we hope that you will stay with us. I also want to point you to pointofview.net because there we're linked to Betty's website, Realizing True Hope, and you can find resources there. You can find out how to get in touch with her, and she's got some helpful items on the website. So go there. You can see her beautiful picture if you click at pointofview.net, and also our donate button is there. And last week we went through our Truth Team 360 sort of effort, and so many of you pledged to help Point of View continue broadcasting every day. If you didn't, though, you can still do it just by going to pointofview.net and clicking on Donate Now or Truth Team 360. We hope you'll be a part of our team. It's really a great team. We'll be right back.
Point of View is committed to spreading the truth, oftentimes a truth that those in political power don't like getting heard. But the only way it can be heard is if our team stands strong together, if you do what you can to support the Point of View Truth Team. It's having an impact, as we heard recently from U.S. Representative Louis Gohmert.
Everywhere I go, I hear people that you have influenced, that Point of View has affected. You have made such a difference, and you rely on people to contribute, and if they don't contribute, then that truth does not get heard.
Help Point of View make a difference. Pray and consider what level is right for you. $30, $65, $100 a month, or even more. Please do what you can. 1-800-347-5151, or visit online, pointofview.net. Look near the top right for the link that says Become a Monthly Partner. Join the Truth Team, 800-347-5151, and pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
And Betty Hanks is also in studio with me, and we are talking about childhood sexual abuse and really the healing process, which is the goal and aim of Realizing True Hope Ministries, which Betty started because of the testimony of her own life. And there's so many things about this that are sort of counterintuitive. One of them, Betty, you say that the process of healing and redefining herself, this is the woman who's experienced this abuse, in the truth of God's reality for life is not a horizontal process. It has unexpected turns. It has very high highs and immensely low lows. Where do the high highs come from?
Well, the highs come when we have a moment of realization that something about that we have believed about ourselves from the time of the abuse until the present is not true.
Oh.
And we have these great feelings of elation. That is not true about me. Celebration, praising God, just that everything that I have believed about myself is not really defining who I am. And the first time you have one of those, you think, "Ooh, my healing is done. I'm good to go. I'm ready to go." And then the Lord yanks something back out and says, "Not yet. We've got more work to do." And that's one thing that I want people to understand. This is not a journey that ends in this lifetime. This healing process doesn't end. It goes on and on and on throughout life. Now that we can decide, I'm done pursuing this part of my life. I'm going to choose to function right where I am, and I'm not going to mature anymore. But if the Lord has different plans for you, He doesn't take that as an answer. And He'll continue to put you in positions where you'll start to realize that there's a lie from the past that is resurfacing in the present that you need to deal with. And that's where the really low lows come in, because when you've been at the top of the mountain and you can see things newly, it's really frustrating and discouraging to find yourself back down at the bottom, feeling like you're starting over.
So in a sense, that's discouraging to hear that it's really a lifelong process.
It is, but so is our sanctification, and this is just a part of what the Lord uses to make us more into the image of Christ.
I've had people say, you need to just get over it. I mean, you've thought about this for many years. That's enough. Move on. If you obsess over it or you just seek this healing your whole rest of your life, you're only going to keep yourself in a pit. Not true?
Not true. Not true. The greatest growth comes from when we are able to face what we've been through, allow the emotions that should have been real in the moment, but weren't because we couldn't survive them if they had been real in the moment. We have to let those emotions be real now. We have to let the tears flow purposefully, because behind the tears is insight. And when we can, if you think about being in a room filled with water and all you're trying to do in that room filled with water is survive. As soon as a little bit of that pressure and the water is let down, then there's a place to breathe. And then there's a place to think. Okay, I'm not in the grips of death right now, so I have a moment. I can take a breath and I can think for a moment, and then I can deal with whatever the next thing to be dealt with is. And as the water begins to lessen more and more in the room, you can finally get your feet on the ground. And you can finally start to have more and more time to think without having to gasp for a breath. And the healing process is a lot like that. The more we can be real about the emotions that we're dealing with, those emotions let off some pressure, and then we can think. And we can begin to understand where our thoughts come from. Make a connection to, I feel this way in the moment, in part because of a connection with the past. And when I experienced something similar to this in the past, this was my reality. And now I have to redefine the way I choose to interact with the world now because my circumstances are different now.
Betty, a lot of people who've experienced abuse go on, they got married, they have children, they have friends, they have jobs, whatever. And they seem okay on the surface. And I think that was your experience for a while until the Lord chose to kind of rip it open at His opportune and appropriate time. And that's what happens. What if people refuse to deal with it? What can happen? I mean, even to your own kids.
Well, it can be a really ugly state of affairs, quite honestly. When we choose not to deal with things, when the Lord is calling, life tends to fall apart. And we can think that life is going to fall apart more if I do pay attention to these things, because then everything hurts more. But what we're failing to pay attention to is that hurt doesn't stop if we're not paying attention to it. It continues to grab at you from the inside. And the more we ignore it, the more chaos it wreaks. We can watch, I've watched people that I care about very much make really, really bad choices. They may turn to drugs and alcohol because they numb the mind. Mm-hmm. And if I'm drunk or high, then I don't have to think about these things. And every time I come
what
down.
What if I just come in and I'm just a really high achieving person?
Oh, performance is one of the greatest masks we can wear. That was the mask that I wore the best until the Lord just yanked my world out from underneath me.
Because you were blessed to have a great, your high school sweetheart. Mm-hmm. He didn't even know about the abuse, right? And
he didn't.
You were married and it came out later. So, but he's just been a wonderful husband. So you've had that success in life, a good marriage. Some people don't have that. Mm-hmm. And then you've had success in other areas of your life. So, but still, the Lord ripped it open for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I was enjoying teaching. I was pretty good at it. And then by God's providence, he put me in a classroom with high schoolers. And of course, some of the most traumatic things that I experienced in my life were during my high school years. And that connection I didn't make on the surface was being made under the surface. And I just began to be one of my teenagers. And I became very ineffective in the classroom. And to the point where people came around me who loved me enough to say, I would rather see you get help and us not be friends anymore than to maintain our friendship and watch you keep spiraling down. So they came and intervened, and essentially I lost my job because of things that people around me were reporting to my superiors. And they were perfectly appropriate to be reported, but I couldn't hear that in that time.
But something like this was a grace of God in your life.
Absolutely.
Because it caused you to deal with it.
Right.
So folks, that's what I'm just kind of trying to get at here is that if you have this in your past, if you've never dealt with it, if you know someone, there are some hard things that have to be done in order to get the healing going. Mm-hmm. And all along the way, it never ends. And one thing that happens in churches, Betty, and this is something that you deal with, is that sometimes we Christians, when someone tells us something like this or we learn it, we have reactions that actually do more harm than good. Mm-hmm. And even pastors can do this, correct?
Yes. As a matter of fact, a dear lady that I have worked with has reported she's trying to plug into churches. She's trying to find a home, trying to find those people who will really love on her and help her walk through some very difficult circumstances. And she's had pastors with whom she shared her story, and then the next time they see her, they turn around and walk away.
They're afraid.
I
get that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get it too. They don't know what to do, so they choose not to do anything. And unfortunately, what that does for the woman is it teaches her that she's not worth plugging into. She's not worth learning more. She's not worth having to spend a few awkward moments while she struggles to find the words to talk to you. We've got to find a way to quit putting our discomfort ahead of the needs of somebody who's broken. We have to come to the place where we can love her like Jesus did. And we know that Jesus knew all the answers and we don't. So we feel ill-equipped in the moment. But if we are relying on the Holy Spirit to work through us when we're walking with these women, we don't have to be afraid of that. Sometimes all she needs is for you to just be there. Somebody to just hold her hand while she cries. Somebody to bring her a meal when she's had a really rough week and she just can't even think about how she's going to get dinner on the table tomorrow.
Wow. So it can be immobilizing at times.
Absolutely. I can't tell you the number of days when I was in the throes of my therapeutic process that I didn't get out of bed. Mm. And then you're worrying that you're failing your family. And, how am I going to ever show my face in public again? Because now people know that I haven't been out of bed in 3 days.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about a problem that's real in so many lives. And I remember before, well, just a few years ago, one of the co-hosts of this program was very open about sharing her experience in her life with abuse, and just the different ways that it would surface in her life, even though she was a very successful person and ministered to many other people. And that was kind of one of the times when I realized, okay, it's okay to be open about it. She was so open about it, she would talk about it on national radio. And that's what we're doing today with Betty Hanks. I'm so grateful for her and the way that she wants to help people. And we're trying to sort of spread the word about it here on Point of View. Again, you are welcome to call us if you have either a story or a question. Our number is 800-351-1212. We'll be right back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Betty Hanks is with me. She's president of Realizing True Hope Ministries. We're talking about sexual abuse. And Betty, one word you've used in your materials is resilient, which is a word that, it's encouraging to me because sometimes I feel that this person who's been abused is very fragile. And yes, they are in some ways, but they're also resilient. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, God has given us a spirit of resilience. When we walk through these things, we get afraid that we'll be overcome by them. And other people are afraid of the same thing. What happens if she collapses, if she has a breakdown, if I'm not able to help her? But what we need to realize is that the Holy Spirit is at work in that time, and that is a time of great growth. And when we feel like we're at our weakest is when He is at His strongest. Our spirits are very resilient because of the work that God is doing within us to restore us to who he created us to be.
We've got some calls. Let's go to Jerry in the state of Texas. Folks, they really have hurts going on, or the people in their lives do. So let's find out about this one. Hi, Jerry.
Hi.
Thank you so much for calling.
Yes, ma'am. My question for you is, this is not about sexual abuse, but about a battered woman. My mom was a battered wife, and now she's a battered mother. My brother...
Your brother?
My brother is mentally ill and lives at home with my mother. She's 83 and still cannot cut the ties and get him out of her life. He is verbally abusive to her, and I want to jump in and rescue her. And out of respect, how do I draw that line? Or how do I step over that line and do my job as a daughter to protect my mother?
Well, first of all, there are resources that you can probably get in touch with in your area. There are laws about protecting the elderly, and there are resources available. Check with your local authorities and see what you can find out about how to protect her. And because you may not have the ability to just go in and move her out, see what resources are available. I would encourage you, as her daughter, please do what you need to do to protect her.
Okay.
Because she is not capable of protecting herself at this point.
Jerry, are you nervous about your brother's reaction?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so is she, and that is why she continues to go along, is what she says, go along to get along.
Mm-hmm. I would love to talk with you off the air if you're interested in doing that. You can find all of my contact information on my website at realizingtruehope.org. Please feel free to contact me either by email or by phone, and I would love to talk with you specifically about the things that you can do to get the help that you need to help your mom.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I'm so glad you called, Jerry. Let's take another call here from Elizabeth in the state of California. Hi, Elizabeth. You're on Point of View with Betty Hanks.
Hi.
Hi, Betty. I just wanted to say that what you're talking about really was how I felt, because I went through something really traumatic with some bad stuff, not really good, and I tried to go to my mom with it and my family, but they wouldn't wait for me to get the words, and it was always kind of like how you're talking about, you feel as a person like they don't want to pursue you, or they don't want to, you're not worth plugging into, because I wasn't fast enough. She would just leave the room and say, come back, like, I'm not going to wait here for you.
It was too hard for her to hear, I guess. You think?
Yeah, probably.
And it's really hard for people to, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because there have been times when it has taken me across 2 or 3 or 4 therapy sessions to finally say the words that are eating away at my heart. And that's just the reality of the situation for a lot of people. So if you know somebody who is hurting in this way, please just be patient. Don't push her. She's not ready. She doesn't know the words. She's struggling to get them out. And quite honestly, for the words to come out of your mouth makes them more real. And that's a whole new level of adjustment that you have to go through. Do you have somebody helping you now?
Well, I've kind of been to different churches mostly. I like having diversity of people to go to.
Sure.
Sometimes I don't want to tax people to the point where, I don't know, because I feel like, it makes me sad. I just feel like from everything, I feel like it's, like, for one person to even deal with it all, I just can't just go to one person. Because it wasn't just my mom, it was like my whole family did the same thing. I would be crying, and it's like I'm crying alone. Because they wouldn't know how to deal with it. They're just like, oh, she's crying again. And it's not like, oh, hug her, she's crying. It's like, well, leave her alone until she's done with whatever. That's how it's always been.
Well, I am so sorry that you haven't had the support that you need. Do you have anybody around you that has shown any interest in allowing you to just be where you are?
Yeah, but it's the kind of thing, I just have to go find it. They're kind of far away.
Okay.
I drive like an hour and a half, and just recently, like a month ago, I guess it really affected my walk with God because I kind of, what I seen from my family, I guess I thought that's how God was.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to deal with it anymore. So when I left, I was still like, I love God, but I wasn't that into any, like, I don't know how to explain that. So then I went to this revival. It was happening at the park, and the evangelist, he was talking to me, and, like, I forgave my mom and my dad for stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I finally felt whole inside.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started to go to church in my own town. Like, and that's when I realized people were actually close enough to, like, help me deal with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's new.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad that you have at least started down that road, and find some people to plug into. And if you are meeting people who care about you but aren't quite sure what to do and how to help you best, check out my website and have them give me a call, send me an email. I would be happy to kind of guide them as they learn to walk with you.
Really?
Absolutely.
Oh,
That's what God's called me to do, and I am happy to do that.
wow.
Elizabeth,
Okay.
you know, I remember just a few minutes ago, she said to her husband one day, "You need to get me help now."
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it sounds like it's a little frustrating for you because people aren't listening, but there's got to be someone, even if it's a paid professional,
Absolutely.
that you can just say, "I need help now."
Mm-hmm. And anything, if you find that you need somebody to talk to or somebody that you just need to bounce some ideas off of, or get some ideas for how to find resources in your area, because clearly California is not that close to Dallas, but I can help you ask questions. I can give you some resources that might help you plug into a professional who can help you.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for calling in today. We really appreciate it. And I've got to say I'm sorry for the other folks that have called because we're about to close out the hour. But let's give out the website, Betty. And, you know, I know that you're very, very available. You will respond, won't you?
I will respond. Every email or phone call that comes across my desk, I make sure I respond to. Give me a couple of days because sometimes it gets a little bit heavy. But you can reach me at www.realizingtruehope.org.
www.realizingtruehope.org. If you're driving, just remember you can go to pointofview.net and click through. We'll link to it. Betty, thank you so much for what you do, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Elizabeth, thank you for calling. And all of those who are waiting on the line, please go to Betty's website. She will get back to you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, next up, we've got a couple of other topics today. We're going to talk about Common Core and kind of give you an update on that and what are the roots of it. And also, we've been talking about bathroom bills. Well, we're going to talk to the original bathroom bill battler here in England and California. We'll be right back.
This time of year, it seems everyone's looking for a better, more affordable healthcare solution. But with costs rising and options limited, where do you turn? If you're a Christian, you turn to Medishare. It's not insurance. It's over 154,000 believers who share each other's medical bills. It's about half the cost of healthcare insurance programs. And it's fully acceptable under the law. Best of all, Medishare is based on the timeless principles found in God's Word. You never pay for things that go against your beliefs. Medishare is healthcare that fits your family and your faith.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your health care. For your free information guide, call 844-45-BIBLE. Not available in Montana. Medishare, affordable biblical health care. Call 844-45-BIBLE. That's 844-45-BIBLE.
A big thank you to members of Truth Team 360. You make this program possible. Not a member yet? Join today at pointofview.net. Click on Donate Now and become a monthly partner. Pointofview.net.
Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's been some troubling news headlines out in the last several months about the latest iteration of public education, which is Common Core. Some of the headlines: cost woes plague Common Core rollout after 45 states adopt school standards. Many have second thoughts. That's the Wall Street Journal. Another Wall Street Journal editorial: Obama's education report card, test scores fall after testing comes under assault. Imagine that. Says the administration says that the discouraging results that have come out on the NAEP exam, which tests a representative sample of students every 2 years in all 50 states, may be a blip. Perhaps, but the retrogression is troubling. Math proficiency is in the fourth and eighth grades slipped 2 percentage points nationwide to 40%, and 33% of students are respectively for fourth grade reading. Progress was flat. And then another piece out of the Journal: the soccer mom revolt against Common Core. People are starting to get wind of the problems with Common Core. It says, it's by Jason Riley in the Journal: the more parents learn about this federal effort to impose uniform math and reading standards across state lines, the less they like the idea. Well, we could have told you so, ladies and gentlemen. These are just the outward problems with Common Core. There's so much more that underlies the surface, and Common Core is just, as I mentioned, the latest iteration. There have been so many names and so many attempts to fool the public about an agenda that's really been the same for decades. And there's a new video out that explains all of it. It's called Escaping Common Core, Setting Our Children Free. And the creator of this, and the person who is my guest right now, I'm so glad to have him, is E. Ray Moore. And he is a chaplain. He was a chaplain in the U.S. Army Reserve, and we have to thank him today on Veterans Day for his service. He's a South Carolina native, graduate of the Citadel and Grace Theological Seminary. He's worked in pastoral ministry and also in Christian organizations. And Ray, thank you so much for joining me today and for your hard work on this.
Thank you, Penn, and it's great to be on the show again. I think I've been on, off and on, a number of times over the last several years, so it's great to be a guest again.
It's been too long since we've had you, and the reason that we're having you is because this summer you've put out a new video, but it's really the same story, Ray. There's an agenda in our public education system that goes well beyond just the problems parents are seeing now with the way math is taught or with our results on the NAEP test. It goes deeper, doesn't it?
Right. It really goes back strongly to the turn of the 20th century, in the John Dewey era, when progressive education began to make a serious attack on traditional education through our state-run public school system. So in our movie, we trace it back to the Dewey progressive era in education. So it's been accelerating really over 100 years. And now Common Core is the latest iteration, as you say, and it's really sort of the final step in the radical left effort to damage education and to take total and full control over our children's minds and souls. A lot of Christians and conservatives sort of wake up, it's been going on over 100 years, but now they're waking up. This Common Core is so harmful and so damaging, And they're kind of stirring, but they're just over 100 years late. But we'll take them anytime we can get them.
Well, what we see is, of course, people complaining. I hear just parents in the neighborhood and around town talking about the way math is taught, or the fact that history is not portrayed correctly in certain classes, or the reading method, and so the results are not as good, and they're worried about their kids' academics. But the issue really is that it's not the academics that are the real problem with it. It's the affective side. It's the side that changes core beliefs and values. There's been the attempt through all of these different programs, Goals 2000, School to Work, Careers, No Child Left Behind, all of this.
Yeah,
it's an attempt to change the mind of the child, isn't it?
Yes, and it goes in our lifetime. So it's been a bipartisan effort of both major parties. There's really no difference in the Democrats and Republican parties at the national level when it comes to K-12 education. The real era that we're dealing with is the existence of state-sponsored public education. And so I saw an opportunity with the Common Core agenda to create a movie because Common Core is such a big issue nationally now. As like you said, it was written up in the Wall Street Journal. It's being discussed in the presidential primaries. Even the ones who are against Common Core, and we're really glad for that, they don't really have proper solution. They want a fixed public education. And we believe that it's not repairable. It cannot be reformed. And the only real solution now to save our children is for churches and families to do either Christian schooling or homeschooling, and to pull out en masse and go to the promised land of Christian schools or homeschooling. I think it's sad as a 40-year minister, chaplain, or congregational minister, they have to say that the evangelical pastors have been derelict as a group on this. I mean, there's certainly some major exceptions, but as a group, they do not address this, and so their children and their evangelical churches are going to be destroyed by this system.
What do you say? What do you say when someone says to you, "Well," and I've heard this so often, "I want to be part of the solution. I want my children to be influencing others for the faith, so I have them in public school for that reason"?
We call that the children's salt and light argument. And it's so harmful and so egregious to our Christian families today to keep this faulty theology of little children who are not yet shaped in their worldviews. They're not prepared to send them into harm's way and to have their morals and their faith and their worldview completely corrupted by the state system. It's become such a harmful belief that I have begun to refer to it reluctantly as the children's salt and light heresy. Being salt and light is a valid part of all of our Christian experience, but it certainly doesn't apply to little children in their formative years to put them in a pagan, godless, and demonic system. And it's happening.
I've got to jump in because we're coming up on a break. E. Ray Moore is my guest, and we're talking about education, especially public education. And, to the extent that the curriculum in the schools is dictated by the federal government, we can say that it's not, but most of the state curriculum are all the same. That's a sign that we're in Common Core and that we're in something that's not good. And so, ladies and gentlemen, really, our guest, Ray Moore, says the only solution is to get your kids out. We'd like to think that we could fix it and reform it, and perhaps some of the efforts will be successful. But I think we as believers need to think about our own kids. And, whatever resources God has given us to allow us to educate them, we ought to use to the fullest. And just remember that the state does not have the best interest of your child at heart, even though you may think he does. We are going to discuss this more right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
20 years ago, no nation on earth endorsed legal same-sex marriage. Now same-sex marriage is everywhere. How did this happen? This is what Dr. Al Mohler attempts to answer in his new book, Why We Cannot Be Silent. He was on my radio program to talk about his book. He explains that this didn't start with same-sex marriage. First, we had the sexual revolution. Initially, some of the legal and cultural battles were over issues like birth control and contraception. America began to redefine marriage first by changing laws concerning divorce, and later with the acceptance of cohabitation and sex outside of marriage. There was also a homosexual rights strategy. Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen proposed a way in their book, After the Ball, to normalize homosexuality and marginalize Christians. They took advantage of the AIDS crisis to establish homosexuals as a victimized minority deserving a special protection and care. Albert Mohler explains how their strategy changed homosexuality from a vice to a virtue. He also talks about the impossible possibility of same-sex marriage. Homosexual activists were able to shift public opinion in their attempt to redefine marriage in a relatively short period of time. The emerging generation sees this redefinition as necessary because homosexuality is portrayed as the next civil rights battle. Albert Mohler also talks about the transgender revolution. Most Americans are not even certain how to talk about it, especially in this postmodern world. He concludes with chapters setting forth the biblical perspectives on sex, marriage, and family, and he raises important questions about the homosexual movement and what that will mean for religious liberty and the right to be a Christian. Our religious freedoms are in the balance in large part because of the sexual revolution and the redefinition of marriage. That is why we cannot be silent. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. I'm Penna Dexter. Dr. E. Ray Moore is with me by phone, and we are talking about public education. There's so much information that we could discuss about this, Ray, that it's difficult to pull it into the amount of time that we have. So I really want to tell people about your video. It's available. Actually, you can go to pointofview.net, or Ray Moore will give you the website to go to get a hold of this. In fact, I would say don't get one, get several, because this is something that you'll want to pass around to people, show in churches, show at home, to help people understand sort of the agenda behind Common Core and why why the results aren't good, but deeper than that, what they're trying to do with your kids. And Ray, I think when we talk about who the child belongs to, that's a very important concept, because children belong to families, not communities and not governments, correct?
Right. Let me go ahead and put out the webpage so people listening can write this down. They can order the movie, and we urge you to order them in bulk copies for your pastor, your elders, even Christian schools and homeschool groups. And the webpage is escapingcommoncore.com. escapingcommoncore.com, and they can get copies. If they order over 5, they can get them at a discount. And if you have an activist audience, which I know you do, they might want to order them and help remarket them to recover their investment. But it's an important message to get out to churches, and particularly homeschool and Christian schools too, because this egregious system is encroaching its way now into Christian schools. Many of some of the Christian schools are even adopting some facets of it without realizing the harm that it will do to their children.
You know, I think one of the things we need to understand is that public education it never is religiously neutral. I think parents, even Christian parents, delude themselves, don't they?
Right. Well, people don't know the history of it. It's really, for the first 200 years of American history, we had no state-run public schools in the United States. All the schools were either private academies, home schools, or church schools. In New England, they had sort of a community school, which was sort of a hybrid between a local county school and a church school, but they were really Christian in their core. And in the 1840s, the Unitarians and the Socialists sold to the Protestant clergy in New England that they could use state-run, tax-subsidized public schools to coerce or convert Catholic children into Protestants.
Oh, okay.
That's a trick play they used to bring it about. A lot of the people resisted it, but gradually churches began to give up their Christian schools, and they said, you can teach your pet doctrines in your churches, but we'll teach the Ten Commandments and the Lord's Prayer at public school. Well, the Catholics pulled away and set up their own separate system, but we Protestants were stuck with this benign system. It was not Christian, but it was not anti-Christian. Well, that changed in 1962 and 63 with the prayer and Bible reading decisions, and it's accelerated now to where we are today. So Common Core is the latest and most harmful of all these processes, and most Christians are just waking up. Very sleepy group we have, and just waking up to the harm that's coming to their children. But we'll take them when we can get them, but we are using the movie to try to push Christians to follow a biblical, scriptural model of education, get their children out and set up Christian schools and the home school.
Yeah. Well, I think the first step to that, and that's what this movie does, is to understand the beginnings of it, the history. You do that so well, and there are actually two different parts to the video. The second part has to do with worldviews, and I think, Ray, this is so interesting because really you're dealing with two opposing worldviews here that are fighting one another. And under the transformative administration of Barack Obama and the folks in power now, when you say this is like the final step to sort of being socialized, it is.
Yes.
It really is.
Yeah, it's not a new thing. It's an old thing with a new name. I was in a conference recently. I don't want to get too specific, but I met a public school administrator in the Dallas area. And when I tell the story, you'll see why I'm not going to be too specific. But wonderful Christian woman, beautiful Christian woman, goes to a well-known evangelical megachurch in the Dallas area. And she has an official position in the school system in your range there. And she told me that she had gotten a directive, and I couldn't remember if it was from the state of Texas or the federal government, that she would have to implement transgender education in the school district that she was in. And she was in great consternation of soul and mind. And my guess is that she won't do it. But if she doesn't, she'll be fired or penalized. And if that's the case, they'll just replace her with somebody that's more compliant. But this is going on in our schools, and this same-sex transgender education probably is sweeping through thousands of public schools and school districts even as I speak. So they're going to be indoctrinated not only in Common Core and in evolution, but the worst aspects of the sexual revolution, they'll expose that to all of our children. And the churches are just sound asleep. I hate to say it, but I think a lot of these pastors are going to have a lot to answer for on Judgment Day because they didn't step up and protect their flocks from this harm. And they just pretend that it's not happening and that somehow these little kids will be salt and light when we already have evidence that 80% of evangelical children who are public school through their career abandon the church and abandon the Christian faith in early adult years. So
yeah, and you have the studies to back it up, don't you?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we have there are a lot of studies on this. Even the Southern Baptist Family Life Commission in 2002 put out a report that showed it was about 80%. I think they've withdrawn the report. Barna Group has done a lot of research on this. The recent Gen 2 study by Dr. Brian Ray with the National Home Education Research Institute. Dan Smithwick's Nehemiah Institute has done research on worldviews, not drop out as much, and he shows that 83% of evangelical children who are public school are either Marxist socialists or secular humanists in their worldview.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse. So the churches have not responded. And so I have, we expect the left and the liberals to do this sort of stuff. This is part of what they are. But to think we can reform this system at this late hour, it never was really reformable, but now it's become absolutely harmful. The only way we're going to save our churches and our families and our children is to get out. And this movie makes the case, and I think it's successful where people look at it, they are leaving. We go to homeschool conventions all the time, and there's a whole new constituency coming in, older families with children in high school that are pulling out of public schools and sending their kids either in homeschool or Christian school because of Common Core.
Ray, tell people
It's
again
sad,
how to
it's
get the
sad
video, because I mean, there is what you're telling us is the tip of the iceberg. It's in these videos, and so you know, I wanted to have you on so people could understand.
EscapingCommonCore.com. That's where to order the video, and then if they want information, printed literature and books, they can contact my ministry webpage at ExodusMandate.org. ExodusMandate.org. It's sad, Penna, that the Christians and people are responding now because of the malpractice in education. They're messing their children's math up and their English and literature and history. But they didn't respond when the theology and the moral climate of the schools had been bad for years. But it's a sad, the state of the church is just pitiful. And I think we've done our best to correct it over the years, and we are seeing progress, homeschooling and Christian schools.
Okay, well, listen, I got to jump in because we're about at the end of the segment. I want to thank you for all you do and for providing these resources. And, you know, I think, ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportune moment for people because, I mean, if there were ever a time when there are resources and ways that you can have an alternative for your children, it's now. There are all kinds of different types of schools, churches, and different organizations have put together. You need to research them. Or if you want to homeschool, I mean, there is everything out there for you to be able to do that. And so, you know, it's a good time. It's more accepted now. You can get your kids into colleges if that's the direction they're going to go. A lot of the colleges actually love the homeschool kids because they're well educated. So these alternatives are out there, but some people just need the motivation. I think this video, Escaping Common Core, would provide it. Again, if you're just driving, go to pointofview.net and you can click through to the Exodus Mandate website and find out how to get this. And I recommend you do. Thank you, Dr. Ray Moore. We appreciate your being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, he brought up the transgender agenda in schools, and we're going to talk about that next with Karen England. There was a bathroom bill in California before there was anywhere else. Let's see where that stands. We'll do it right after this.
Kirby Anderson and Point of View don't have major corporate support. We need your support to continue. As U.S. Representative Louis Gohmert told us recently,
it just scares me to think about that voice of reason, a Christian voice, a wise man. I hate to think about what would happen if your voice were silenced just because the money was not there to stay on the air.
Make a difference starting at just $1 a day, $30 a month, or $65 underwrites 1 minute of our program. 1 minute standing for fiscal responsibility, promoting a sane foreign policy, defending the reliability of the Bible. Please pray and consider what level is right for you. $30, $65, $100 a month, or even more. Do what you can. 1-800-347-5151 or visit online pointofview.net. Click the link that says Become a Monthly Partner. Join the Truth Team today. 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Penna Dexter.
Welcome back to Point of View. We've been talking about public education, and, one of the big pieces of news of late that we've been discussing, and we actually discussed at length here on Point of View yesterday, is this whole idea of the transgender agenda, the bathroom bills that have been really causing a lot of people, indigestion, among other things. Parents worrying about safety of bathrooms and things like that. And a lot of it has had to do with these SOGI laws, sexual orientation and gender identity laws that have been passed around the country. And they're usually not passed by people. They're passed by city councils, elected officials, because it's not really a popular thing to open up facilities to whatever gender you feel like you are that day. A lot of parents are worried about the safety, especially of their young girls in these situations. But the battles are taking place in Houston, Texas. It was a victory last week because finally the people of Houston got it onto the ballot, and they were able to vote on it. And guess what? By an overwhelming margin in Houston, the people said, we don't want businesses to be forced to violate their faith with regard to the transgender and gay agenda. And also, we don't want this idea to be rampant in our community, that bathrooms can be for whoever wants to go in there. And nowhere is this agenda more dangerous, more hard fought than in the public school or in schools in general. And there have been so many cases that have been rising up with regard to this. It started in the state of California, and I think I'm about to be joined by Karen England from California, the Capital Resource Institute, to talk about the progress of fighting that agenda out there. It started years ago, but we're seeing it in other areas of the country now. And in Palatine, Illinois, there's been a story that's cropped up in the last few weeks. They've been battling this agenda for 2 years, and the federal government weighed in a few days ago. This is at Township High School District 211 in Palatine, Illinois. They received notice from the U.S. Department of Education that they are violating Title IX, which is it's the section of the law that says you can't discriminate with regard to gender. And they say they're violating that by not providing a transgender student open use of the girls' locker rooms. This is a boy biologically who says he's a girl. And the federal government told this school district they have 30 days to reach an agreement with authorities or risk losing up to $6 million in federal funding, and also face a possible criminal investigation by the Justice Department. So they're going to be investigated for not bowing to the transgender wishes of this young man who says he's a young woman. Now, this student, it's been going on for 2 years, and the schools and the district in Palatine, Illinois, have bent over backwards to accommodate this man. He's been undergoing hormone therapy, but he's a boy still. He has not had the surgery. And the school district has accommodated him. They've allowed him to participate in girls' sports. But now he has been demanding to use the girls' locker room, and they have drawn the line at that. They tried to let him use the locker room by erecting privacy curtains and having various stations in the locker room so that he could have privacy and the girls could have privacy. But that wasn't good enough for this man. And I don't know if he's got people behind him or what. But he said it was unfair to require him to use these privacy curtains. So they're still fighting. And guess what? The federal government says he has to be able to dress in the locker room. The boy said, the district's policy stigmatized me, often making me feel like I was not a normal person. But ladies and gentlemen, a normal person accepts their God-given gender. And, I think that our federal government is deviating away from normal in demanding that the school district bow to this. So we'll be following this. We'll continue to keep you updated on what's happening in Palatine, Illinois. But now we want to update on something that's actually been taking place for a bit longer. And that's this agenda in the state of California, where the folks out there are really fighting back. And Karen England joins me now. She first became involved in advocacy work after observing the harm that was caused by many bills in the California legislature. They're crazy out there. And I can say that because I grew up there. But she is now executive director of Capital Resource Institute, and she advocates on behalf of family values and pro-family legislation. Karen, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me.
We've talked about the bathroom bill, and of course it was AB 1266. The legislature passed it, and it was one of the original bathroom bills, wasn't it?
It was, and it's so interesting or scary that a couple of years ago you had me on the show, and whenever I would talk about this, everyone thought, oh, that's just crazy California.
Right.
You know, and now we've got Houston and Dallas and school districts all over the nation, and it's just frightening how quickly this movement against privacy has just taken off.
Yeah, it's a movement against privacy. I mean, that's part of it, but it's really a movement against religious liberty and the ability to operate your business or your school or whatever, and to take into consideration people's, values, which are moral values. Now, even in Texas, you mentioned, California is maybe crazy, but Texas is supposed to be conservative. And Collin County, which is near here, it's in the country, and they've passed one of these things.
Yeah, and this is it's like you said. This entire movement is far more than that. District, they're doing these little pockets. They're going in and saying we're going to sue you if you don't do this. But the reality is, a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl, and this idea.
I think we might have lost Karen. It's completely cut off. Catherine, perhaps you can try to get her back. It sounds like there was maybe a drop call, but she's absolutely right. The laws of science, biblical laws of how he made us male and female, all of these are, tend not to be taken into consideration by these bills. In California, of course, this was passed by the Assembly. Assemblyman Tom Amiano of San Francisco. He introduced the bill. The title of it was the School Success and Opportunity Bill. And that was passed in 2013. It was never really used, that title, because the legislation was the most divisive in recent years. It was called the School Success and Opportunity Act, but it was very divisive. It caused an outrage and uproar among parents in California worried about the bathrooms being used for this transgender agenda in California. And so now there is an effort to change it, to overturn it. And when we get Karen back, we'll ask her about it. But this is what the bill did. It required that a pupil be permitted to participate in sex-segregated school programs, isn't this familiar, and activities, including athletic teams and competitions, and use facilities consistent with his or her gender identity, irrespective of the gender listed on the pupil's records. So it's basically how they feel, who they think they are, was going to determine what facilities they got to use, not their biological gender. So if a student believes that they are one sex, even though their physical characteristics might suggest they are of another sex, they may use the restrooms and showers of their desired sex, play on the athletic teams of their desired sex. So this was a very targeted bill out there in California. Now, in some of these cities where we have these SOGI laws, it's only one of the parts of that, of the legislation. But in this California bill, this was the point, to integrate the bathrooms. And I think this, it was so specific that it had parents outraged. Karen, I think we lost you, but you're back.
Yes,
what I want to know is what's happening with it, because was it ever implemented, or did you get some sort of a stay while you tried to get this overturned?
Well, the law is supposed to be legally stayed because we're still in court. Now, some school districts, because there's nothing that prohibits it, are still moving forward in implementing, co-ed restrooms, bathrooms for gender non-conform. Yes, so they are. We had a few. San Francisco and LA were already doing it prior to the law, but now it's been forced. And
because there's some conservative parts of California that I'm sure don't like it. Listen, Karen, we got you back, but now we're on a break. So we will, ladies and gentlemen, continue this discussion with Karen England. I think it will be enlightening for you. And, if you can fight back in the state of California, you can fight back against this stuff anywhere. We want to encourage you and be watching out for it in your community. We've got it in Texas. So it's everywhere. We'll be right back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
We're telling the stories of the transgender agenda for bathrooms, locker rooms, and there's one that's in the news recently in Illinois. Apparently, I mispronounced the city. I said Palatine. It's Palatine. Rhymes with Palestine, Illinois. And they're fighting the federal government on this. The federal government's trying to force them to allow a boy who says he's a girl to change in the girls' locker room openly. So, Karen, in California, you're trying to fight back. And when people vote on these things, it usually goes the right way. So next year, you're hoping that in California, you will be voting on it, aren't you?
Absolutely. We're collecting signatures. You can go to Privacy for All and download a petition, and we are hoping to get it on the ballot in 2016. And the people, just like in Houston, will vote with privacy and, I think, reality and common sense. And you mentioned the school district in Illinois, and I just want to state that Alliance Defending Freedom and the Thomas More Law Society have both come out and said they will defend this school district, that there is nothing in federal law or Title IX or the Constitution that demands this, and all of the court cases are on our side. So if you've got communities out there that want to stand up against this like Houston did, the law is on our side, and we should be fighting back and protect our daughters from, males going in their restrooms and locker rooms.
Yeah, the courts, it seems like it has to be fought in court. Like, for instance, in Houston, they tried to invalidate the signatures, and so it had to go to the Texas Supreme Court. In your case, there is also a court battle, right?
Yes, it was very similar to Houston, where they threw out signatures that really should have been counted, and we are still in court over that. But we're not moving as quickly in California as you guys did in Texas. And so in order to make sure it's on the ballot, we did an initiative while we're still waiting out the court case. And so very similar to what took place in Houston.
So do you think when will the vote happen if it does happen?
It will be in the fall of 2016, and we're confident that all of our polling shows what took place in Houston, that people agree with us, and that they think this is just a little bit too far, and that it's pretty much insanity when you're all of a sudden saying the opposite biological gender can disrobe in front of another gender. I mean, that's what they're saying. And they're saying we should be embracing it. And there are a lot of us that are saying, no, we're not going to embrace that.
Karen, I mean, do you know, since you live or work in California, do you know people that actually believe that? That actually, I mean, there've got to be a lot of liberals out there that and I would just be curious to wonder, what kind of argument are they making for this?
Well, it's interesting. I did a New York Times interview, and you run into them, and honestly, it's usually reporters, not you, Penna, but usually it's reporters, and they'll say, yes, but that boy really believes he's a girl. And I say, yes, but when he's standing next to me in the restroom, he's not.
Yeah.
And it's like this total disconnect, and I'm not questioning his sincerity, but he is still naked. And I still have a right to privacy and a right to not be exposed. And my daughters and granddaughters have that right as well. And that's what we're fighting for. I mean, if we're not going to fight to protect our daughters and granddaughters in this kind of a situation, what are we going to fight for?
Karen, do you think, because there are a lot of people out there who aren't that educated on the homosexual and transgender agenda, or they aren't really worried about it. But when you bring safety and privacy into the equation, they are worried about it. Are you experiencing that?
Oh, absolutely, and that's why this issue is different. I support traditional marriage, but a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, live and let live. That's my neighbor down the street," because it didn't, or they thought it didn't affect them. We're now seeing that it does on the religious liberty issue, but on this issue, this hits home to every family. Ours with Privacy for All is dealing with schools and any government building for adults as well. So
it is. Okay.
So I won't have to be exposed. So this actually hits home for everyone. Everyone could encounter this situation. We have a school district that is going to be sued as well, and I'm sure the Obama administration has jumped in Nevada, where it was a biological female, and she's wanting to go into the boys' showers and locker room. They've been accommodating her for 4 years.
I'm sure the boys just love it.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, can you imagine how uncomfortable they are in junior high at 13 years of 13 years old, to have this girl just come into their locker room every day when they're changing for PE? I mean, this just goes too far, and people are standing up saying, "No, this. I'm not crazy for thinking this goes too far. I'm going to fight this."
Okay, yesterday when we were talking about Houston, I was discussing the victory in Houston with Jonathan Saenz, who's with Texas Values.
Right.
And, right during that, I noticed a news article came out in the Washington Post Obama supports altering Civil Rights Act to ban LGBT discrimination. So they're calling this bill the Equality Act. It's ENDA on steroids. It's much more encompassing than ENDA. It probably includes bathrooms. I mean, that's probably one of the first things. So here we have this agenda coming down from the federal government. Now, I doubt our Congress would pass the Equality Act under, Republican hands. Hopefully not. But again, we have this White House endorsing this, and it makes it very difficult for states who want to protect their citizens, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just endorsing, he's advocating and pushing it and using the power of the federal government by going to the school district and saying, we're going to withhold funds, putting the school district in a tough spot where now they're going to have to defend themselves and sue the government back. But again, law is on our side, and I want to encourage your listeners that we need to stand up. Now is the time, just like they did in Houston, and say enough is enough. And that not only is the law, but culture is on our side. The people are with us. This is common sense to protect the privacy and the modesty and the safety of our kids and our women when they go into these private facilities.
Karen, we have a lot of listeners in the state of California. You gave out the website where people can go and sign this petition or get hold of it. You need more signatures, correct?
We do. We have another few weeks to collect signatures at Privacy for All. You can download it, print it in the privacy of your own home. You can send the link to everyone. We've got bulletin inserts for churches. We have signage if you want to go collect signatures at Walmart. Go into Starbucks over the red cups, and instead of talking about the red cups, talk about privacy and students, and get signatures there.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you for the work you're doing out there. I know that sometimes you have to fight these battles before everyone else. I'm sorry this one's taking so long for you, but we all join you in prayer that this will ultimately be successful in protecting women and young people.
Thank you, Penna, and thank you for all you do.
That's Karen England, Capital Resource Institute. They are doing good work out there, and I would say they're on the cutting edge of the cultural battles. Who would have ever thought, first of all, that we would have same-sex marriage as the law of the land, but that would not be enough. And now that even the idea of transgenders being able to choose where they disrobe would be out there. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're living in a strange world, so I would just say stay in the Word and stay in prayer. And whenever these things pop up, just remember that biblical truth and also science is on your side, and try to fight them. We will encourage you here at Point of View. We encourage you also to go to our website, pointofview.net. You'll be able to find all of the guests that we interviewed today on the program. We had some people that are fighting some very interesting battles, from public education to sexual abuse to and the results of that, to this transgender agenda. So it's kind of a diverse show today. We hope that you will take advantage of all the resources we put up there, and also the donate button. Ladies and gentlemen, and continue to listen to Point of View on Friday. I think we have a best of show tomorrow, and then on Friday I will be joined by Debbie Georgatos, and we're going to unpack that debate. So stay with us, listen to us then, and have a great couple of days.
This time of year, it seems everyone's looking for a better, more affordable healthcare solution. But with costs rising and options limited, where do you turn? If you're a Christian, you turn to Medishare. It's not insurance. It's over 154,000 believers who share each other's medical bills. It's about half the cost of healthcare insurance programs, and it's fully acceptable under the law. Best of all, Medishare is based on the timeless principles found in God's Word. You never pay for things that go against your beliefs. Medishare is healthcare that fits your family and your faith.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your healthcare. For your free information guide, call 844-45-BIBLE. Not available in Montana. Medishare, affordable biblical health care. Call 844-45-BIBLE.
That's to members of Truth Team 360. You make this program possible. Not a member yet? Join today at pointofview.net. Click on Donate Now and become a monthly partner. Pointofview.net. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show. Decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it. As a Christian, so on track, and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.